Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We've got a lot of stuff to dive into and not a ton of time to do it. So without any further ado, let's get right into the business here. The Senate of the United States is in the middle of a massive fist fight. And right now they are currently in this pseudo temporary kind of recess until 7:30 p.m. Eastern this evening. And we're keeping a very, very close eye on that because, hey, all I can tell you, it's not going to go very quietly. And in fact, this fight in the Senate over the Save America Act, over going on recess, has become so monumental that even on a pretty decent day for the Senate, in which you might have a senator like Tim Scott, friend of the show, good guy, said, hey, Senate Republicans have been confirming President Trump's nominees at a historic pace. Despite Democrats' political games, 95% of civilian nominees have been confirmed, the fastest and highest rate in 25 years, and then we'll continue to deliver the results for the American people, et cetera, et cetera. You can see down at the bottom of this, if you're currently watching the live stream, you're on the TV side of things, you can see it. If not, well, not quite. But I will explain. He's ratioed for this. It's very, very kind of malaise, normal, standard, kind of a meh style of communication here. So what's the issue? People are outraged over, first of all, no recess appointments, because the Senate is supposed to go on recess today. Today, the Senate was supposed to clock out, sing closing time by semisonic, and we were all supposed to go home happy. That didn't happen. The reason that didn't happen is for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Senate is not actually going to a real recess. Senate Majority Leader John Thune walked into the Senate this morning and put down a very fancy piece of printer paper that had this big old long scheduled list of things to do, an agenda. And it was a little weird because normally, although the Senate Majority Leader sets the schedule, he doesn't usually set the schedule that changes more rules than a major league umpire who's really upset at the crowd. So at the very long end of this list of Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a Republican senator, at his list is to go into this 2-week adjournment. And immediately that throws up because that's not allowed. An adjournment is different than a recess. When you adjourn in the Senate, you're only allowed to adjourn for a short amount of time. So say the Roberts Rules of Order, the rules of the Senate, and the precedent that has been established time after time. And one of the reasons the Senate is currently trying to go to adjournment under Thune instead of recess is that if you go to recess and the bell rings and you all run out to the playground, then the President of the United States gets to do recess appointments. President Ronald Reagan had 240 recess appointments. The Senate said, all right, we're done for today, Chief. And the government has gotten so big under the Wilsonian state vision that there are now so many people that it's ridiculous for the Senate to go through this massive, extreme process for all these people. So the president does recess appointments. And because there's no Senate in session, he just rubber stamps. He starts getting the rubber stamper automation machine there going, and a lot of recess appointments happen. So 240 for Reagan. For President George H.W. Bush, with a small readier voice, that'd be 77 recess appointments. And then President W. Bush, the W standing for victory, of course, 171. But Thune doesn't want to give the President of the United States these recess appointments, so that's part number one. Now, the real issue here is that you have one senator from Utah. No, not John Curtis, who is kind of like a cutout of, as Inez Stepman says, kind of every other rhino, Republican in name only, who just seems to be grumpy and standing up and yelling about things that none of his constituents ever agreed to or ever heard him campaign on before. Like John Curtis and Bill Cassidy sometimes, of Louisiana, John Cornyn sometimes, of Texas, and then Mitch McConnell, Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. Whenever they campaign for office, it's always very blasé, very distant, vague Republican promises. And then once they get into office, they start saying they have a lot of actions and principles that they're taking that they never campaigned on. And that confuses people. It's not that you're doing something that you've never referenced, but you'd never mentioned any of this stuff before that you all of the sudden care about. Like, again, keeping the Senate from going over to adjournment. But I'm not talking about John Curtis from Utah. I'm talking about Mike Lee. Mike Lee is very passionate about this thing called the Save America Act. The Save America Act does primarily two things. Number one, it requires you to have a combination of two kinds of ID in order to go and vote. The first is an ID, a real ID, that can be purchased from states like New York for $10, or the state of Indiana, where we're broadcasting from, that is when YouTube lets us, for $16. And then number two, you need a proof of citizenship. And this means either a birth certificate, which you, yes, you can purchase from your local health department for very little money at all. Again, to get a brand new birth certificate copy, which I did the other day here in Indiana, $4 from the Henry County Health Department. All right. In New York, it's also very inexpensive. It's like $10 or $11, according to my last check here earlier this week. Now, let's say you're an immigrant, but you became a U.S. citizen. What do you use? Well, you have this certificate of naturalization that's recognized. Well, what if you're married? Well, I know this is also cool. You have this thing called a marriage certificate that like says, hey, this is her birth certificate, but she changed her name when she got hitched. And if you have lost either of those, they're on file with the clerk of record in your local county government that everyone forgot existed. So that's part number one. Number two, it says you can't be a dude with a ding dong participating in women's sports. No. And also no medical experimentation on children through the transgender hormonal stuff. Those are the rules of the Save America Act. Now, there have been some amendments. There have been some here and some there. That's pretty much it, though. Mike Lee and the vast majority of the American people, not just Republicans, not just independents, but all political parties except for the Democratic Socialists of America. Again, the moderate Democrats are in favor of voter ID. They're very much in favor of these things. And hey, just throwing this out there. If you have a senator that is calling for this and calling for this and calling for this, and more senators over time that join on instead of who kind of leave it away, sometimes a senator will introduce some kind of legislation, and then it'll lose a little bit of steam over a while, and the chugga won't really choo anymore, and so then everyone kind of leaves it alone. Here's the issue, though. The issue for these particular Republicans who are in charge of the Senate right now is that they are losing a lot of their senator buddies, like Todd Young of Indiana and Kennedy of Louisiana, who are not really establishments, not really rhino, but they would kind of play along with leadership because, every club's got a leader, every organization has a leader. Sure, we'll play a fife to the tune every once in a while. Now they're siding with Mike Lee. So what's going on right now, and what does this have to do with the Save America Act? According to my very own producer, Josiah, phenomenal guy, excellent man. He had a conversation with Senator Mike Lee a couple of months ago. And Josiah, to not do an impression of him, but to tell you what he asked Senator Lee on a Twitter X Spaces, said, hey, this whole adjournment thing that the Senate goes to, it's not really legal. Because there's this special kind of motion that any senator can make where you say, I don't want to just go adjourn for another 72 hours, because that's how the Senate's taken breaks during the Trump administrations. You go on a break for 72 hours, then you gavel the Senate back in, you have a couple of senators and say, do we all agree to stay on the break? And then they all in the room nod, all three of them, and then they stay on the break for another 72 hours. And they rotate like a really crappy Somali daycare center staff. It's very fraudulent, yes? And so our producer Josiah asked Senator Lee, said, hey, you know that according to the ancient texts of the United States Senate, you actually have the ability here to say, hang on, no, we're going to hold a vote right now as to whether we want to stay on adjournment or go to a genuine recess, which then allows Trump to do a bunch of appointments. Because if the Senate's not going to be doing work, at least the president should get something out of it and the American people who elected him into office. So what was Thune's plan to get away from this? So according to Andrew Desiderio, I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong, he's over at Punchbowl. He announced about 4 hours ago that Senate GOP leaders just hotlined an agreement to finish up and get the heck out of here. What's in the agreement? A ton of stuff, some continuing resolutions, some promises to address this like pseudo kind of voter ID, sort of occasional kind of a thing. And then, last but certainly not least, at the very, very tail end, a special little motion that says, especially according to Desiderio, says, the way this agreement is structured makes it much more difficult for Senator Mike Lee to force a vote on whether to adjourn for recess. This global agreement includes adjournment. And by the way, does so kind of against the rules. We're going to talk about how this turned out and what's going on right now over on the live stream radio crew. We'll catch you on the other end of your commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So in the meantime, Senator Mike Lee, I will say on August the 5th, so 2 days ago, made this video for this case to the American people. Clip 1.
Imagine you go in for routine surgery. Maybe you're having your appendix or your gallbladder removed. The team of surgeons working on you discovers what appears to be a cancerous, malignant growth inside your abdomen. These surgeons, knowing that they're the only surgeons for hundreds of miles around, confer on what to do. And they take a vote, and they decide that they all want to go on vacation. They don't want to take care of the malignant, cancerous growth they found inside your abdomen. So they vote, they decide to go on vacation. Good news for them is that they get to take their vacation. Bad news for you is that that malignant growth stays inside of you for weeks or months into the future. And by then, that growth may have done enormous damage. Those surgeons should not prioritize their vacation over your health and your safety. America is that patient. We're the surgeons. We have no business leaving town.
Okay, so that brings us over to the very, very strange move by Thune. So again, Thune sets this up, this entire list of agreements that, again, some people would consider to be normal, active, regular kind of a thing. And then Thune does this rug pull so that if Lee wants to get his way here, he has to object to the entire package, including HR 6500, which is a Senator Husted voter ID bill of sorts, and then the Todd Blanche Attorney General nomination, if he wants to challenge the adjournment. So Thune kind of orchestrates this in a way that forces Senator Mike Lee to try to block Todd Blanche from becoming the next Attorney General of the United States in order to stop the adjournment process. And Mike Lee, to his great credit, calls his bluff and says, again, at 4:27 p.m. today, quote, "It's not lost on me that this agreement may have been designed to make it more difficult for me and others," because he's not alone now, "to force a vote on whether to adjourn or recess. Regardless, I'm not on board with that plan, not at all, not with all that's at stake and all that remains undone. For that reason, I have formally objected to the time agreement, contingent on scheduling a roll call vote at 51 as to the part of the agreement that deals with adjournment and pro formas. We are United States senators. It is entirely reasonable to ask for a vote on this." Here's the point. The Senate was supposed to be set up to be run by senators. The House of Representatives is different. Not every House representative, Al Green from Texas, gets to stand up and go, "These dastardly deeds undone," and hold up the entire House proceedings. Not allowed, not a thing that you can do. In the Senate, however, each of our 100 senators and the President of the Senate, the Vice President of the United States, not only limited to a tie-breaking role, has the ability to hold up the whole diggity-dang business of the Senate. The parliamentarian isn't dispatched to tackle Mike Lee. The sergeant-at-arms doesn't go and grab Mike Lee and escort him out. Being a senator is something that is considered a more powerful position. And so every senator has a special Batman tool belt at their disposal because they are one of two individuals that represents a state entity or Commonwealth entity at the federal level. That's all Mike is asking for here. He says, no, the Senate does a ton of stuff by unanimous consent because it is considered to be the body of adults. This is the room of adults. They're supposed to be there. Even if you hate the other person, you're supposed to be friendly and respectful. In the House, that's where there's the autistic screeching and all kinds of stuff. So in the meantime, again, we're coming back in 10 minutes over to the Senate. There is so much that's going on. Ashley Moody took to the floor. Again, Senator Mike Lee as well on other matters today. This is becoming really quickly just a Class A mess.
I don't know.
But we don't have to. It's something. Ashley Moody from Florida also spoke on the Save America Act today. And again, the Senate's status here.
I really am dumbfounded.
Radio crew, welcome back. The chaos in the Senate continues again as the news develops here.
That I still have to come to the floor and have this debate with anybody in this chamber. I'm one of the newest senators. I just got to Washington last year on behalf of the great free state of Florida. And I fought like heck to protect that state during challenges this nation had never faced before, and we did it. We're now one of the most successful states, with one of the states with the most secure elections. And you better be darn sure I'm going to do that here as a United States Senator on behalf of all Americans. It shouldn't be controversial. It is not complicated. It is a basic safeguard of our republic that ensures our government remains truly of, by, and for the American people. And from the beginning, the founders understood the importance of fiercely protecting our elections.
But it's going to take a little bit more than just talking about the importance of the Save America Act and the importance of various other niceties that's going on. What is it actually going to take? Well, it's going to take Republicans in the Senate losing primaries. That's it. There is so much of this that just comes down to Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins. Instead of saying, I'm going to stand in the breach here and I don't like it, which, by the way, they do. Senator John Cornyn of Texas, right? He's on his way out. He came forward and said, I'm not voting for Todd Blanche for Attorney General. And then all of this national pressure descended upon him. And do you know what happened? He ended up changing his vote. Same thing with Bill Cassidy today. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana lost his primary. He's a grumpy boy. Now, though, he is in fact supporting and changing his vote. He is voting for Todd Blanche, again, because of a ton of national pressure.
Senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak to the nomination of Todd Blanche to be Attorney General. Over the last several days, I've heard from lots of people sharing their views on this nomination. And most of the time, it's clear. Mr. Blanche has become a referendum on how people feel about President Trump. If you don't like the president, you don't like Mr. Blanche. If you do like the president, you do. I have not approached it that way. This process should be about Mr. Blanche and how he will go forward in a difficult job and how the American people can be best served. I have a history with Mr. Trump, but that history does not matter one bit. On the one hand, Mr. Blanche does not need to be Senate confirmed. He can continue to serve at the pleasure of the president as Deputy Attorney General, or even acting Attorney General if this vote is pulled.
True. He can also serve as the Attorney General if the Senate goes to recess. This is the issue that I have, and I have it very, very often when it comes to those in elected office, and it's an issue a lot of Americans have. The reason that the Senate wants to go into their August recess, first of all, is because in August, a lot of people in politics, they take breaks. This is like the vacation month for a lot of people that work in this. You have teachers, they go onto their summer vacations from, used to the end of May through like Labor Day. Now it's sort of June and July. August is the vacation month. It's the only time that you can kind of get a quick breath here that isn't right after the election season. And there's usually a whole other ball of wax and rushing before January to get things done if your party just lost power, etc. And if the Senate actually goes to true recess because they want to come home and campaign, it's a midterm year, the Senate wants to come home and do some campaigning. All right? If they want to do that, then go to recess. You don't get to do both. You don't get to do I'm going to go do some campaigning and I want to stay in so that the administration can't do anything. Nope. Not going to be a function here that works. Now, again, there's a lot else going on in the Senate. In the meantime, Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, the ghost of her father, has told her not to vote for Todd Blanche, so she's out. Susan Collins is out. It's just a lot of weird back and forth, silly slapping. I do believe that Blanche is going to be confirmed. Now, again, moving forward here, as we continue, it's also worth saying, and it really is, it's very, very worth saying here that the Senate is passing some legislation. It's not total roadblock. The Senate passed a bill on sanctioning Russia today, for example.
Breaking moments ago, as they try to head out of town on the August break, the U.S. Senate passing a sweeping Russian energy sanctions bill, the one that was negotiated by the late Senator Lindsey Graham, but would penalize countries who are buying gas, oil, and other exports from Russia that are funding Putin's war on Ukraine. That bill now heads to the House.
Okay, so they can do things. They can pass things. They can make things happen. Another matter, again, the Department of War approved this, but this also got the nod over from the Senate side of things, is a major arms sale toward the countries of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates for replenishing 5,250 interceptors. And that brings us over to the Middle East. So again, we're going to keep an eye on the Senate because they are still 3 minutes and 30 seconds from coming back from their sort of not really a recess, a temporary adjournment. And now we're going to find out, again, whether we're going to get into the rollout here. In the meantime, the Senate gave the nod, and as well the Trump administration, to an arms sale to replenish 5,250 interceptors, this is according to Reuters, to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates for replenishment, which is a little bit interesting. The reason this is interesting is that I was told, and you were told, by all of these super secret expert leakers, that the United States was just plumb out of interceptor missiles. We're out all of the missiles. Essentially, we're only left with rocks and slingshots and whatever David can pull out of the creek. And I said at the time, I would take some of those reports with a grain of salt. So the Reuters report does make it clear that a portion of the arms sales to, again, some of the Gulf states here for replenishing their interceptors, for THAAD batteries, Patriot missile systems, etc., that some of these are going to be built over the next couple of years. However, about 3,000 of them are being sent over right now. Now, let's do a little bit of math together here, boys and girls. If you were told there were only 2,000 interceptors left, and we are sending over 3,000 today, somebody got their math wrong. I'll leave it there for now. So that brings us over to a very interesting, new, pretty huge diplomatic shift that also brings into question Turkey's role in NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that Turkey really shouldn't be a part of. So also big news is that Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, their leadership flew to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and signed a tripartite special friendship alliance defensive agreement. The Mecca Agreement Defense Pact says, quote, any military attack against any of the three countries will be viewed as an attack on all three. Now, what's the point of this? Saudi Arabia knows, they know very well that once they joined the United States in going to open full war on Iran, there's no going back. Again, the UAE is already on like the permanent blacklist for Iran. Iran, if the United States leaves without finishing the job, Iran has been painting on new missiles and taking pictures and tagging the UAE in the pictures and saying, as soon as the US leaves, it's just you and me. And Muqtada, if the gay one-legged son of Al-Khamenei is alive or still brain dead. We're not quite sure. So the Saudis understand that once it's done, it's done. And they are very nervous about a combined attack from the very last of the Iraqi militias with Iran. And would also force the Saudis to align with the Kurds, which that makes Turkey very, very nervous. Because the Kurdish forces are also in eastern Iraq. So there's two groups here, three groups really. You have Iran and the Shias, and they have the Iranians, sometimes Y being Oman, the Houthis. There's very little left of Hamas. There's very little left of Hezbollah. And then that's like their group, the Shias, the very, very angry crew that they are. Number two, you have the Turkish, Pakistani, Chinese associate, kind of Ottoman Empire fondly remembering crew. And they're, they do their own particular kinds of things, They're making their own bizarre and I would argue very damaging foreign policy decisions. And last but not least, you have the Gulf states that are not really either fully aligned with those groups. And the Kurds, the Turks hate them because, the Turks are always up to do another genocide of ethnic groups in the Middle East. Actual recorded genocides, not the imaginary ones in Gaza. Radio crew, we have to send you over to the commercial break. We're going to break this down a little bit more here on the live stream because it gets downright interesting given, the tanks and the APCs currently rolling towards Baghdad. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, let us continue. So the tripartite special Mecca agreement defense friendship agreement thing, it's really annoyed the Iranians because they've been firing missiles at Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, which the United States has also made clear. The Iranians are directing the Houthis in Yemen what to do. So this is a last-ditch effort from Saudi Arabia not to fully get involved. This is. Because this is the, we're going to stand together and hold hands. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. So if the Iranian regime, the parliament, President Pezeshkian, Pez Dispenser, if he had full control over the IRGC, then this would be rather effective and things would probably cool down. But the parliament does not have control over the IRGC in full. What does that mean? This alliance is probably going to be tested and either snap like a thin twig, or then you're going to see the Turks have to make some interesting decisions as to whether to ally with the Saudis moving towards Iran along with the Kurds, who the Turks really, really, really hate. Well, wouldn't you know it? Now there are tanks and APCs rolling north through Saudi Arabia towards southern Iraq. Kind of gives you some Gulf War #1 vibes, because the Iranians are also losing control of the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. So am I saying things are about to get, really, really, really spicy all of a sudden? No. What I'm telling you is that the last-ditch efforts for very paper-thin diplomatic alliances are going to be about as useless as the Spanish plan for the migrants. And Spain is, struggling so hard. So muchly, each and every place. So the migrant problem, by all of these smuggling rings and Islamic activity, again, trying to make their way into Spain, the Spanish police, to their credit, although it gives Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister, a lot of dyspepsia, they are trying to, for example, bust smuggling rings. So there was a major Mediterranean smuggling ring involving 2,000 migrants busted by the Spanish police today. This video is provided to us by the New York Post. And yeah, it's doing a little something. A little. We're bringing the sponges and the paper towels to the breaking dam. But there's a little bit of something being done. But that's not being helped when, again, groups like the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, and the International Red Crescent are still allowed to traffic migrants into your country. Well, under the guise of, we're bringing children in. By children, of course, they mean minors, and by minors, they mean 15 to 18-year-olds. See, guys, it's the children. It's the children. See? Yes. See, this is what all of the elderly liberal ladies want you to believe. It's a bunch of, old men, old women, pregnant mothers, small children, toddlers, perhaps. Not a bunch of military-aged men. I mean, come on, don't you care about the children? This is who, right now, the International Red Cross is ferrying into continental Spain. Not just Ceuta. Not just other little Spanish places and vacation destination spots. Into continental Spain. Which is resulting in people setting up barbed wire outside of their apartments in Barcelona. Excellent. Thrilling. Wonderful. Neat and good times. Now, I should point out here, the radio crew, now welcome back, radio crew, from your commercial break. The International Red Cross is already having a really, really bad time because, again, I've told you again, the elderly liberal ladies who want you to be deeply concerned and just, the children's, has anyone thought of the children? They had a documentary called The Journey of Sharif. It was all about this poor Middle Eastern migrant guy that just wanted to go to the UK. That's all he wanted to do. Just so bad. The problem is that the BBC and the Red Cross went all in on this documentary, beautiful documentary about his journey and how mean Greece was to him. And then he murdered a girl in Greece because, I know, shocker. And now he's been arrested.
He tried to travel to Greece, but the police arrested him and put him in jail for 3 days.
3 whole days?
When I got out, I found smugglers who created another game for me to go to Greece. Finally, I made it.
Sharif has now been at a camp in Lesbos for 6 months.
6 months?
Living in
no.
the camp is so hard.
And then he got to the UK, and then, oh, shucks, it turns out that he actually murdered his girlfriend, left the body in Greece, and then the Red Cross had to take down the video. of the, murderer that they promoted. His sweet, so he's just such a nice guy. He's just wonderful. Just okay. And meanwhile, it's not an invasion. Just a couple of old women, guys playing chess, Great. Wonderful. Exciting times over there. And again, this is happening, or at least is attempting to occur everywhere. Here in the United States, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, signed a series of executive orders yesterday. I didn't get the chance to cover this in detail, but the President of the United States released a lot of new information on plans for the administration on cracking down on birth tourism. So first of all, here was the President of the United States outlining his plans for the process.
So we're cracking down very big crackdowns, and this will give us the right to do it in a much more forceful manner. But they've taken birthright citizenship and they've made a joke out of it. And we're actually the only country of size, I think just about the only country, period, that does birthright citizenship. I thought we were going to win it at the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we had a bad decision, very unfair decision. Our country suffers because of it, and we're ending it a different way.
I mean, I don't see what's wrong with this. By the way, the Senate has now gone into a super double overtime second Jeopardy recess until 8:15 Eastern. Oh, this is going to be funny. So, sorry, let me explain what the actual executive orders are doing, because you might be saying, hey, didn't the Supreme Court of the United States just say that birthright citizenship is guaranteed? Yes and no. The problem for the Supreme Court even, and some of the opinions admitted this, birth tourism, in which you come to the United States explicitly to have a child, is illegal. It's not allowed. Not a thing that you are technically allowed to do. So what do? You release a series of executive orders making it very clear how everyone is going to follow the law so that there is no wiggle room. And this comes in a number of different ways and shapes. So first of all, this new executive order defines birth tourism as entry or facilitating entry of a foreign national on a non-immigrant visa, meaning like a tourism visa, a student visa, a hey, just checking out Mount Rushmore kind of visa, for the purpose of giving birth on U.S. soil. Meaning this, like you say, oh, I'm here, I'm 9 months pregnant, and I'm just here to see the Statue of Liberty. And then, but you're coming in to Texas, but you're not going to New York, you're going to Guam. The Statue of Liberty is not in Guam. Like, oh, well, I have no idea, and that kind of thing. So this executive order directs the Secretary of State and Homeland Security to take actions to deny any visa or travel authorizations or revoke them and permanently bar entry, deny entry, and remove individuals involved, while allowing some limited exceptions for humanitarian or national interest reasons. And essentially saying, look, if you say, oh, I want to come visit things, and you're like 9 months pregnant, the answer is going to be, you're a big fat liar, and how about no? Go home and have your baby in your own country. No. And also, if you're coming from a national service or an organization that is advertising birth tourism services to the United States, you're automatically banned if we think you've been using that. And number three, if there's a country that's offering these services, and I sure hope they follow through on this, although I know there's one country that we're probably not, there need to be sanctions. So if Mexico allows these services to operate, sanctions. If Panda Express, if China allows these services to operate, they should get sanctioned. Go all the way, Mr. President. Don't just do the hokey pokey and it's put your left arm in and your left arm out kind of a situation here. Also, an executive order on continuing to protect the meaning and value of American citizenship, which instructs all executive agencies not to issue or recognize U.S. citizenship documents for certain children born in the U.S. or territories to non-citizen parents in specific categories. So that means that, for example, the state of Indiana, there's no federal law that forces the state of Indiana to give a birth certificate to non-immigrant parents' children who had the child here in the state of Indiana. That's not a thing. Also, those who are in U.S. territories, we've talked about this right after the Supreme Court case came out. Also, commercial transactions and the surrogacy situation, where China will pay an American to have a baby and then ship it back over. which, by the way, I'm pretty sure violates several U.S. anti-slavery laws. The current surrogacy system in this country is slavery. I mean, I have a lot of issues. You would think as a Baptist, I wouldn't have as many issues with surrogacy as, say, a Catholic would. I think that surrogacy is evil. Is evil. Baby factory stuff? No. No. I don't like it. I don't care for it. And if you were a child of surrogacy, there's a society that has built up a lot of things to kind of trick people into believing that some things are moral. And I'm not making any declaration. I'm saying those who propagate this, especially on the economic level for foreign national stuff, that's downright propagating human indentured servitude. Absolutely not. By the way, I'm also of the opinion that if you have a kid here, I think the child should have to stay in the United States. I'm not for this, well, we're just going to go live abroad. No, American citizen, raised here at home in the United States. Instead of having someone like, who would it be? Hasan Piker going and living in Turkey before coming to the United States. But alas, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who gave an exclusive to our White House correspondent at the Daily Signal, Elizabeth Mitchell, the State Department is expanding social media vetting for more foreign visas, which is excellent, and also gave this statement on revoking visas because we want to, because the State Department has the right to do that no matter what some federal judge thinks that he or she is doing. Again, it's one of the first times this administration has ever just essentially given the middle finger to federal judges, and it was Marco Rubio doing it.
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial break just a smidge early so I don't get kneecapped by the time clock here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to continue on the live stream. And then the Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, whom the left truly despises more than like anyone else in the administration, which makes me giggle. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff, which essentially means he's the press secretary of sorts for the Chief of Staff. Like, I don't think there's all of the stuff about Stephen Miller being a super duper ultra Nazi 8.0 is really hilarious to me anyway, because he's not. He's just like a dude who doesn't mince his words. But they freak out when he says stuff like this today that average Americans go, yeah.
Yes, for those of you who want to do your research on this, Section 215A of the Immigration and Nationality Act gives the president this authority. 215A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Very rarely used, probably one of the strongest laws in the entire federal code, gives him this power. And that's not the only, but it's the main statutory authority that's being used in this order. So birth tourism is by definition a fraud on the American system, on the American taxpayer, on the American visa. If you're coming here, and again, your stated purpose is that you're a tourist, then by definition, you are here to come for a few weeks, look at what we have, engage in commerce, and leave. So if you're telling a consular officer you're here as a tourist, but your true purpose and intent is to go to a baby mill, give birth, and try to mint an American citizen while you're here, then you're committing a fraud against the American government.
Also, on the nature of seeking asylum, I want to make this clear, this whole, I'm seeking asylum from wherever. The issue that I have is that now so many people have, you ever heard like one bad apple spoils the bunch? You know what I mean? Or like signs up in places that are really weird and confusing signs, and it's because one person did something really, really stupid and they ruined it for everybody. That is the asylum claiming issue. The idea that there is an international right for the United States to let in threats because there might be a pregnant mother somewhere, and so if 40 people are murdered so that one pregnant mother can be here instead of Mexico, so be it. A Christine Blasey Ford kind of liberal self-aggrandizement. For me, when I see this kind of stuff, I do not believe, the average American doesn't believe, that just because there is someone out there who might in fact get left out in the cold. If you go to Costco and every day you steal all the free samples, a week from now, there won't be free samples. They won't. They'll stop the practice. The same way that used to, there weren't a lot of plexiglass glass cages over all of the shelves, except for certain products. And now there are. How strange and curious that is. That kind of a thing. I have no problem with the idea of political asylum for a long time until people ruined it, because as soon as you could just come in and go, I declare bankruptcy like Michael Scott, or I declare asylum, ignoring all of the other rules, all of the other background check, all of the other procedures, now I don't care, because it has cost Americans far more. Now, the White House released a kind of a fact sheet on this. I really don't want to spend a ton of time on this, because the president also went after Abdul El-Sayed, he wants you to say his full name, to talk about how the DSA is taking this, because they're also eating their own right now. And it's truly one of the funniest things that I have ever seen in my entire life. It's pretty great. It's delightful, in fact. Radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. So, while the Senate is having a very rough time, and they're doing some fist fighting and some punch throwing, and the President of the United States is doing executive order business, he also threw out this line on Abdul El-Sayed, or excuse me again, Abdul Raham Mohammed El-Sayed, and he wants you to use the name, not me, the president.
It's very important for the country that we win, because you have people getting in office right now who will destroy this country. You're a person in Michigan that won the other night.
Abdul El-Sayed.
He is a disaster for the country. Got a good line of stuff. I watched him. He speaks well, speaks okay. Seen better. But I'll tell you what, guys like that get in, they'll destroy this country.
Yeah. He's not wrong. There are a lot of people right now that are trying to say the only reason that people don't like him is that they're Islamophobic and they don't like him because he has a funny name. No. Again, as one liberal commentator pointed out quite clearly, no one on the right had an issue with Dr. Oz for being a Muslim. I didn't even know that Dr. Oz was a Muslim until I saw that tweet. Because he doesn't get out there and say really awful stuff about the country. He doesn't get out there and campaign with Hasan Piker. He doesn't get out there and do deeply awful things. It's also because, again, he was running against Haley Stevens, who was the gooberiest goober that ever stumbled out of a hole in Michigan. And then she also tried to claim that that's just how Michiganders act. We're all really cringy moms in an early 90s sitcom. And everyone was like, ugh. And they still came out and tried to vote for her. And he barely beat her in the primary because there were a lot of college youths that voted. That was the why. So the real issue in the general, the dude's unlikable. He thinks he's really likable because he wears t-shirts. That's why he thinks he's likable. He's not. Here he is saying, I hate Mackinac. Mackinac Island, there's a little Democrat conference that they're holding up there, some type of retreat sort of a thing. Which, first of all, this is truly hilarious. If you've ever read Kurt Schlichter from townhall.com, he has a series of novels, kind of like a post-apocalyptic America kind of a thing. I'm not joking. There is a scene in one of the last chapters of his last spy thriller novels that takes place at a Democrat conference on Mackinac Island, where the Democrats are complaining that they hate Mackinac Island. And I'm not joking. He starts the book by saying, quit taking from my book and making it reality, meaning like stuff in this book is bad, quit imitating it. And now here is Abdul El-Sayed going, I just hate Mackinac so much. Like,
please watch yourself.
I hate Mackinac so much.
Because that's what you do. That's what you do. By the way, I'm fully well aware that there are things in every state that people do and they don't like. But if you are running for office, insulting the things that your state likes, probably not a good idea. I have made this clear. I've chatted with Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever of the Indy Fever a couple of times. I'm not saying it's a close friendship, like a couple of times. And I don't like the WNBA. I don't really talk about it that much. I don't really care for the Indy Fever. I'm sorry, sue me. Even though the Caitlin Clark and the Sophie, oh, so great. If I'm running for office, though, do you think I'm going to be like, you know what I really hate? The Indy fever. No, that's not smart. You don't do that. You don't look at everyone around you and go, I hate all of you people. For example, when Hasan Piker, in the middle of the Abdul, as it really looked like Abdul might lose, he was supposed to crush Haley Stevens and he didn't. Abdul's like, oh, all of the Haley Stevens supporters that they're going to need to win in order to beat Republican Mike Rogers this November. Oh, there's such a bunch of Islamophobic, bleakety, blankety blank expletives. That's not a very smart thing to do. That's rather stupid. But it's, worse because the DSA are also eating their own and being really, really dumb while they do it. I made this case about Francesca Hong on our special feature over at Tony Kinnett Cast over on our other YouTube channel, that she kind of has a little bit of the barista AOC-ish language to her, where AOC has a lot of passion and a lot of anger and a lot of energy. But then when you talk to her, you realize that she's really stupid. And same with Francesca Hong. You actually talk to her and she's an idiot. She has no plans on how she's going to accomplish anything. She's just going to make it happen. And it turns out that's a requirement just to be a part of the Democratic Socialists of America. So Democratic Socialists of America the co-chair of the party, Megan Romer. She says, we've got to tax the hell out of the millionaires. She doesn't even know what that means. And I'm not using a colloquially there. She has no idea what that means. Check it out.
But we do believe in taxing the hell out of millionaires. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what does taxing the hell out of them mean?
Yeah, I don't have like a solid, but I think.
But shouldn't you? I mean, if you're the co-chair of the DSA, shouldn't you be more specific than just taxing the hell out of something? What exactly do you mean?
So again, it's democracy, right? And we have to look at what we need to spend and what we need. We don't want to depend on the existence of millionaires because that means people are still getting exploited. So
so much not at all how that works.
So yeah, we need to look at.
By the way, like the idea of the communist revolutions in Soviet Russia, in China, in communist Cuba, and on and so forth, even in Albania of all things. When they went through that process, all right, you went from having very few, if any, millionaires at all, to then supposedly in the area where all of these rights and all of like the living standards of people were supposed to increase, the Soviet Union gained people of extreme wealth and influence. Same with China. So the addition of millionaires in China and Russia didn't magically equalize and start exploiting people in this way. No. As the United States has increased its number of millionaires and billionaires, the standard of living has skyrocketed immensely.
What we need to pay for in the interim, what sort of tax base we need for that to happen, and then and build from there.
Very, very special. Again, the leader of the party should really know the policy stuff. That's kind of important. Kind of a necessity here. There's a lot. It's bad. And it's so bad now that the socialists are turning on each other. Speaking of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on June 27th, she came forward amid all of the socialist angst, and she endorsed Hakeem Jeffries to be Speaker of the House, which is probably not the best of moves because remember the whole little socialist campaign night for Zoran Mamdani's little darlings, in which there was a picture of Hakeem Jeffries that appeared on screen for like a network hit, and the crowd started chanting, "You're next," with bloodlust. Well, AOC is a little more political than that, and they're very upset at her over it.
I read just a part of what she said. I take your point. Do you still feel, though, if Democrats went back to the House, that Hakeem Jeffries is the right person to lead?
I've engaged in many conversations with Leader Jeffries. And for me, and we have a broad caucus, right? For me, I have made very clear that one of my priorities in determining and in a leader determination is securing public housing financing for New York City. And Leader Jeffries has made his prioritization for the residents of public housing very clear. And
yeah, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna fly. And now you have a lot of people in the Democratic Socialists who are saying, well, maybe we should. And I just love it. I do. It is truly endearing to me to see all of this here. So anywho, on the other side of the Socialist Party, they're trying to suggest that candidates like Abdul El-Sayed, they have no problems at all. They're just going to scoot right through the election, no problem, because you know what, guys? Stereotypes don't work anymore.
Every single person sitting around this table has had the most anti-Muslim attacks lobbied against them.
Sitting at that table, 3 of them would be Rashida Tlaib, who is not popular in the rest of the country or outside of her district at all. Ilhan Omar, just over the border, or 2 or 3 borders, I should say, in Minnesota, not popular outside of her. Like, Rashida Tlaib has no chance in hell at a Senate seat. Neither does Ilhan Omar or her husband. All right, so not too great there. So I don't know if saying you guys have all overcome discrimination here. Radio crew, it's the end of our Friday broadcast for y'all. We're going to continue on the live stream here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Okay, so as they're out, I appreciate from Automac the comment 11 Omar. Yes, thank you. I got to make sure we get the Roman numerals correct there. We'll let her continue, and then we'll build off of this.
Just for entering into the public space and running for public office, is there a way where we will evolve past this, or is this just the way things are for our community right now?
I mean, based on what I'm seeing right now, is that it's not working. You know, it used to work in the past because people didn't know Muslims, but our community has matured and it's grown. People know Muslims now. You know, people, it's their neighbors, you know, we're their friends at school, we're their doctors, you know, we're the shopkeepers where they go and they buy stuff.
That argument, it's just not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because the candidates who are running at that table, now I can't speak for the gentleman, but like, again, Abdul and then Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, they say insane and awful and evil things. That's what gets them stuck. Also, they refuse to condemn awful and evil things. If you had a situation, I don't usually like to do, well, if a Republican did it, if you had a Republican senator, actually you have had situations where there are like Republican senators not willing to condemn some comment that Donald Trump made offhand as a secondary report from Air Force One or whatever. And if there's a senator that's on the right that's not willing to condemn that and say, oh, that's very, very bad, then that Republican gets creamed by the entire national left. But if you have an actual individual, like one of these Islamic candidates, who make open excuses for terrorist attacks on Michigan synagogues, daycares, churches, or say that America deserved 9/11, or is actively campaigning with a guy or with a gal who's saying, yeah, I mean, there's some people that deserve to be raped, and if they are going to be raped, it's probably better that they're raped at a Ivy League school, like Hasan Piker has said when he's not, shocking his dog or paying a European 15-year-old prostitute, or, the kind of things that Hasan Piker just does, I really don't think this is going to play as well as they think it is. It's not. Now, before we move on to the truest, sunshiniest moment of all, just a moment that warms my heart, and it really does, with James Carville and kind of the Democrats on the party splitting apart, because again, they're eating each other right here and right now. I want to talk just very briefly about our sponsors. So before we get back to the show, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Augusta Precious Metals. They're a new sponsor of the show. If you're interested in learning more about wealth protection and the role physical gold and silver play in a long-term retirement strategy, I highly recommend that you check out Augusta as a great educational resource. Their experienced education team offers personalized one-on-one educational web conferences where we're going to explain how physical gold and silver actually works, how a gold IRA works, answer your questions, and help you understand your options. So to learn more, visit TonyTrustsGold.com or text Tony, Tony, to 35052 to request Augusta's free guide. All right, so in the meantime, I hope maybe this will be the last time I reference this. Just 2 weeks ago, I had the treat, a week and a half ago, I had the treat to be on a CNN panel in which I said, hey guys, there's a lot of reporting that points out that black voters don't care for the socialism stuff. And they're a huge chunk of the Democrat Party. According to the DNC itself, they're supposed to have issues that represent the diverse groups within the party. And that means the cornerstones of the Democratic Party are black voters, brown voters, whatever that means, which brown voters really don't like being called brown, but that's another topic for another time. And then you have the LGBTQ plus 25A equation super somersault wingdings group. Yeah. And then you have angry suburban women. Yeah. And then like Muslims who sometimes fit in the brown, but not, and the socialists are kind of doing their things. Like those are your groups, right? And the black voters have been abandoned because they were cool once upon a time, but I mean, Barack Obama's not in office anymore. And it turns out that's not really what's getting the kids going these days. And I'm brought up that the socialists are not very popular because once the breast milk of artificial campaign spending stopped going to black campaigns in the South, and when I say black campaigns, I mean they run on I am black and Republicans are trying to delete black people from Congress. They'll tell you that, whether it's in Tennessee or in Arkansas or Texas or in Georgia or in the Carolinas, Florida, wherever. And they've said from their mouths that the left is abandoning them. And I got, people lost their ever-loving minds and clutched pearls and cried big crocodile man-child tears. Well, wouldn't you know it? I know. I'm shocked as well to be right yet again. James Carville, ladies and gentlemen, former campaign mastermind of Bill Clinton.
The blacks don't buy.
No, by the way, they're not voting for any of these DSA candidates. Neither are the Latinos.
Screw the blacks out of the nominating process because they know they can't win South Carolina. Black folks, or listen to me very carefully, are the most loyal part of the entire Democratic coalition. If you disrespect them, they know it.
How about that? Gee! Why, what a crazy thing. What a concept. The most loyal faction of the Democratic Party. Because again, black individuals are supposed to be part of in the Democratic lens on the right. Black people are seen as individuals, as people, just like the values or the virtues of a Hispanic individual has nothing to do with their accent. It has to do with their character. Are they a part of bettering this country? Whether they're black, red, brown, white, doesn't matter. That's the standard for the right side of the aisle. But on the left, it's, are you good for your color group community? And it's, again, that's why Republican black men, like Tim Scott, we talked about at the beginning of the show, are called race traitors and Uncle Toms, which is disgusting. Because they're seen as not like sticking on the union line with they're a scab kind of a thing for black people.
In a Democratic Party can never show any distance between itself and black voters. And it gets to the point that the progressive want to disrespect people. They're going to understand that, and you're going to lose a constituency that has stuck with you for the last 70 years.
63, but yes. And I love this. I do. I love this for them so much because they did it to themselves. You know what? I don't care if it's not politically correct. Here's the real secret as to why the thing didn't work. Republican groups, and often to their detriment, we talked about this with Michael Knowles yesterday, the benefit of the celebrating success and the quote unquote bootstrap culture or the individualism culture is that we celebrate stories where someone came from nothing and then achieved really great success, whether that's in finance or in political influence, or whether that's in business leadership, or whether that's in the arts or athletics, and so on. And so you often find that Republicans do not lose support of specific demographics because once you join the Republican Party, you're kind of sorted into that based on your merits. And also the unifying of like, well, you're all Republicans, you're all Americans. Like, I'm not African American, I'm not Asian American, I'm not Hispanic American, I'm American. That kind of a thing, right? And on the left, instead, the argument over the last 63 years has been, you are disadvantaged, you are poor widow babies who are so stupid. Kathy Hochul says black New York kids don't even know what a computer is. They're like, what? Computer? I've never even seen. And so like, that's their argument. Oh, black people are too stupid to get an ID. Black people are too stupid to actually go out and register for certain things. Black people are too poor. Joe Biden, you had, you had rich kids and black kids, or he said you had poor kids and white kids, one of the two. That kind of concept. What that creates is a breast milk addiction. So breast milk, high in fat and in sugar. Now, in nature, most natural nutrients are either very, very, very high in protein and fat or very, very, very high in sugar. Breast milk is not. And so actually, it's funny how often scripture ends up being correct here. You guys are getting the full gamut this evening. So the Bible often talks about someone who is new in the faith being raised on the milk, mother's milk. And then someday, when they grow in the faith, they move to the meat. And it's a more active experience. Democrats have never moved any of their crews, any of them. They never moved suburban women. They never moved black voters. They never moved brown voters, Hispanic voters, and then all of the add-ons that made Hispanic people less special in the eyes of the Democrats. They're never going to move socialists or the LGBTQ plus 2IA. They never moved them off of the mother's milk. They just leave them on the teat. The problem for the left is not only does that create, permanent welfare classes in your own party that are dependent on you. Think about all of that. Whenever you have Trump say something, what happens? You have groups on the left who say, this was really sexist, or this is really homophobic, or this was really like a white supremacist, or this was really anti-whatever, right? That's the whole point. Because it's just about, I am being attacked. I am being victimized. Give me money. Give me money. There, I did the voice for the Discord crew that's tracking that voice for this evening. Give me money. I want your money. And then when they're cut off, they're like entitled little spoiled rich children. Like, how dare you cut me off? How dare you? I'm going to die. I'm going to languish in the street. Have Jonah crying over the gourd that God cut down. Oh, it would be better if I were dead. Yeah, that's right. I just quoted VeggieTales Jonah. Boy, what a show this evening is. Which, since we're here on this, may I ask you guys a bit of a favor? So, real talk here. It's 8:08 p.m. Friday, August 7th. To those who are watching, the 6,411 concurrent viewers currently on the stream, YouTube dropped the stream right before we got started tonight, and I have genuinely no idea why. None. I have no idea. I'm very frustrated by it. It threw off the Emperor's Groove right before the show. And I'm serious, we literally just brought in a brand new, fresh, own special internet connection just for our setup to run the show, and it crapped out. And because it has crapped out in this new way that it really hadn't before several times this week, the algorithm, a lot of people leave whenever the stream cuts out. That's just something in the show kind of side of things. That's why you try not to have problems. We're getting penalized for an error that I'm not even sure is our own. So would you seriously consider, if you haven't already, liking the show to help combat against that error, whatever it is? After the show tonight is over, and trust me, it's almost over, I'm going to be calling up some of our tech friends on the YouTube side and asking, heaven help us, please. We have to fly some people out to get this fixed, because I hate it. We hate having issues. This isn't an internet bill pay. We got a brand new internet connection set up. I was in a attic at 120 degrees today, rolling around in fiberglass to try to get this fixed tonight. I'm very sorry about that in the intro section of the show. If you're catching this hours later, by the way, you have no idea what I'm talking about because it happened in the section that producer Daniel is going to cut out. If you would, seriously, some of you are watching on TV, I know, consider just throwing a like and subscribing if you haven't already, just on this video alone. That would help, I think, because we're just doing our best over here. So thank you guys very much. The comments are being very, very, very kind. I really appreciate it. You guys are excellent, and we really, really, really think you guys are the best. Now, that said and aside, and wow, there are a lot of people that are going to like the show right now. We really do appreciate you guys. The last little bit here before we end for the evening is on the subject of what is the federal court system doing about all of this. Because believe it or not, the federal courts are the next big task in the second half of the Trump administration that's going to get really, really, really interesting. My personal predictions are still, and I really might be wrong on this, I don't think that John Fetterman of Pennsylvania stays in the Democrat Party until the end of, I think by the end of 2026 calendar year, Fetterman leaves the Democrat Party. That's a personal, just kind of a prediction there. Number two, I think that you will see the Trump administration start to ignore federal judges pretty soon. Pretty on the money, pretty on the line. And then last but not least, by the end of Trump's 2028 term, I think the filibuster will finally be broken in the Senate. Now, as of right now, here's your midterm forecast. I think Republicans are doing a lot better than a lot of people think by nature of the left ripping itself to shreds and not getting back together. And moving forward, as long as you have federal judges who, for example, today denied the Southern Poverty Law Center's bid to dismiss its criminal indictment on claims of vindictive prosecution, which allows the case to move forward. You have some judges that are trying to kind of squeeze in and do the last little bit of activism that they can. And now you have other judges that are rushing in and smacking down other judges. And since the Supreme Court of the United States has now set precedent that says we don't need to intervene and arbitrate when one state sues another, there is a very strange line of precedent based on how the federal government views federal court systems based on the districts, that they don't necessarily need to arbitrate and intervene directly when a federal judge from one court intervenes and slaps down a federal ruling or injunction from another court. So things are going to get really, really hairy and spaghetti-brained over the next couple of weeks with federal judges slapping each other left and right. Now, is that going to be really entertaining? Oh, absolutely. It's going to be incredible. Incredible. Now, last but not least, I do not have access to the Discord this evening because my phone is somewhere in this room and not in front of me. And the computer that I have in front of me doesn't have Discord. So we're going to do a little bit of mail time, and I'm going to rely on producer Jen to get some of these questions in front of me. Don't worry, producer Jen. We're going to play the Hasan Piker videos because that's what question number 1 is about. So without further ado, let's just do just a smidgen of mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, we're not going to switch to the mail time slide because out of concern that it might be the chat tracker that's causing issues. Yeah, that's not up and over here. So anyway, on the regular side of the mail time situation here, first and foremost, did you see, and I've gotten this question like 5 or 6 times now all over the DMs, Hasan Piker was supposed to be in a speaking event for the University of Washington this evening. They have now canceled the event. The University of Washington posted, quote, "It was determined that the process for organizing this event did not meet the necessary level of rigor for university-hosted events in the speaker series." And there are some people who are going, this is really funny, good, I like that Hasan Piker is being canceled, he deserves it. My take on this right here and right now, I don't like that. I despise Hasan Piker. I think he should be arrested by the Department of Justice for a number of things, inciting violence against a United States senator, for likely violating some in-kind contribution laws for the Federal Election Commission. And last but certainly not least, he should be arrested for smuggling goods to Cuba, an enemy of the United States as written by Congress. However, if you want to go speak at a United States public university that is receiving my tax dollars, I don't care whether you're Ben Shapiro, I don't care whether you're Hasan Piker, I don't care if you're Charlie Kirk, I don't care if you're Jennifer Welch. I don't care. You should be allowed to go and speak at a university event if it is receiving public tax dollars. Now, if it's a private university, Hillsdale College takes 0 federal dollars. They get to decide who comes and doesn't come. But if you receive federal funds of any kind, shape, or form, speakers should be allowed to come to the university. I occasionally speak at some universities. I think Hasan Piker should be allowed to speak. Now, the other reason that I think that Hasan Piker should be allowed to speak is that whenever Hasan Piker speaks, he says some really, 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 really stupid things. And I think that is just wonderful for the Republican Party and conservatives. Exhibit A.
I don't give what black people care about. Oh, black people care about this, black people care about that. Like, shut up. That's not how politics works. Oh, well, Hasan, how dare you? Like it or not, black people care about this issue. It's like, it's such stupid stance.
Any other black folk want to engage in radical activist language? Chat, suck.
Yes, dude. It's because I'm racist. That's why. It's because I'm racist, dude. Go back to a better time when lynchings were happening. This is what I like as a black man. Are you always doing too much with black people? Leave them alone. I want to go back to lynching. Like, I get it, but relax. Man, shut up. Okay.
Hasan Piker is just somehow slightly less gay Nick Fuentes. And again, I can say this because I knew Nick Fuentes like 10 or 11 years ago when he was part of the small conservative writing outlet that I was a part of before we kicked him out for being a really bad writer. And also Nick Fuentes is like retarded and said stupid things. And he basically brokered his arguments like Ilhan Omar trying to debate Thomas Jefferson. It just wouldn't have gone well. So I can say Hasan Piker and Nick Fuentes, kind of strangely the same person. Love it. I love this. I want more of this. So ask and you shall receive. Hasan Piker.
If I hated the United States of America, I would be a Republican. It's that easy. That's it. If I hated the United States of America, I would literally be a Republican. I would become a Republican Party consultant. I'd make a lot of money. And I would advocate for Republican policies.
I've been meaning to talk about this for a while because I get this question sarcastically a lot. And I just want to make things very, very, very clear here. Guys, some kinds and areas of politics are lucrative, but also people in the political game are getting worse and worse and worse and worse at disguising when they have money and when that when they start simping after things. So for example, I have sponsors here on the show. I do. And right now, as things go, we don't have like a ton of sponsors. That's not kind of why we do things here for the show. And I work for, as of today, the Daily Signal. And do they pay me poorly? No. But do they pay me the kinds of dollars that have me running around in extremely fancy, weirdo suits with crazy stuff on like the walls behind me and like dressing like Mao? No. If you've watched the show before, you have seen this is the navy blazer that I wear at least twice a week. I got it from Amazon. All right. And the shirt I'm wearing came from my local Goodwill. Otherwise, I don't think I would own Joseph A. Banks shirts. My grandmother taught me to shop at Kohl's and Marshall's and like the season sales. And so for those who are like, Israel's paying you $7,000 for every show and post. My dude, I wish. I mean, is there a form to sign up where I have to like be a part of the secret anti-Candace Owens crew? That apparently everyone's getting paid to say that she's an illiterate moron, or I'm getting paid to say that I'm Republican or whatever, to kill people. Amazing. There was no illegal immigrant rolling around in my attic today to try to get the fiber line for the private internet connection specially made just for this show. That was me. I love it. I just, incredible. It is truly. What a magical time to be doing this show. All right, some more mail time questions. There've been some super chats tonight. And I guess I want to be clear. You guys don't have to do that. From yesterday, No, this one would be from today. A $5 super chat from Pig Lady 1983 says, "Hey Tony, I listen every evening from Texas. Well, God bless the Lone Star State and keep on keeping on over there. Appreciate you." A $10 super chat from Kevin Stankiewicz that says, "Hey, maybe just grant children born on U.S. soil by you non-U.S. citizen parents legal status such as nationals instead of a citizen, as people in the American Samoa territory are U.S. nationals and not U.S. citizens." So the answer for this, and again, the Discord chat's going to love this, would be the political philosophy outlined in Starship Troopers. They would be residents and citizens. And yes, that would be the way, but it's going to need a constitutional amendment now that the Supreme Court's weighed in on it. That requires 3/4 of states to ratify it. So would I love that? Sure, but Congress can't really pass a law to do that now. It's too late. SCOTUS kind of ruined it. Thanks, Notre Dame University's law school. Anyway, that brings us over to a couple of questions from Nutsmasher over in the Discord. Is the new defense pact possibly the opening move in a plan to end the Shia branch of Islam? Not necessarily. I think it's a last-ditch effort. One question was on the Mar-a-Lago $2 don't tell me what to do with my money, Tony. I appreciate you a ton. Again, I'm going to nod at you and a wink and say, hang on for just a bit. What if I ever need to beg you guys for a new microphone or a new Joseph A. Bank blazer from my Goodwill? I'm just messing with you. One person asked about the Belt and Road Initiative. I've asked about it a lot. What is that about? The Belt and Road Initiative is China's long-term diplomatic approach to essentially take the idea of USAID, as it was made for John F. Kennedy, and take that presidential slush fund and use it to bribe countries to work with you. So the original idea of USAID was to give John F. Kennedy a presidential slush fund that Congress did not debate over, so that John F. Kennedy could go down to Honduras and say, listen, I know you're down here in Central America, but you should work with us instead of the Soviets. And then Honduras said, okay. And that prevented the Soviets from digging a separate Panama Canal through Central America. It is single-handedly what saved it. And then USAID turned into something ridiculous and retarded and awful because that's how political bloat works. China took the idea and said, okay, we're going to bribe countries in Central America, South America, Africa, Canada. Here, we'll build you a port. Because if tomorrow I was declared the president of, I'll pick a random, Djibouti. I'm the president of Djibouti in Africa. All right? And I want to be a major economic power and a trading hub. Well, you're going to need a port. Because otherwise, you're just going to be like Spain running boats aground. Spain, I make fun of as a NATO ally because they have run more frigates aground, like onto sandbars and rocks, than any other modern navy combined. 1588 still hitting hard today. Anywho, the Chinese would offer to build me a port because, again, boats need a place to, pull up and do some trading. So that's kind of the idea. And then China would then have you right there. And then they would basically use leverage on the economic assistance that they provide you to then do favors for them. Well, Trump boxed out China out of South America and Central America in the Belt and Road, also doing some in Africa and in the Southeast Pacific. You have the left and left senators, for example, that are going after Pete Hegseth. Dude, I didn't even know Pete Hegseth could do as much diplomacy as the man's been doing. Again, Rubio and Hegseth and Bessent have been the trio who have gotten more done in this administration than I ever thought possible. By the way, that's not a dig at Vice President J.D. Vance. The Vice President has nothing to do by design. That's not his fault. I'm just saying, Rubio, Secretary of State, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent. I haven't seen three guys do this amount of work since Washington's administration. Shout out to Hamilton and Jefferson. How did Turkey ever become a part of NATO? Russia is your answer there. KitPro97 asks a question. Hi, Tony. Why can't the government enforce the Communist Control Act of 1954? There are some lawsuits and some legal precedents that have found some section of that law to be unconstitutional. Sort of. The issue is that you don't have an administration in many cases with the cojones to do it. Once you start down that path, you just have to be brazen and you have to be swift, and the legal system of the United States really isn't necessarily built for it. Again, a lot of precedent has become the rule, which is really, really annoying. By the way, hey, producers, before we leave, could I get an update on if the Senate actually did anything at 8:15? I'm going to guess the wild answer there is a no. But you never know. I'm sure the Senate has found ways to be really explicitly useful in the last couple of minutes here. Anywho, last question for the evening here before we saddle on, partner. Tony, what is Thune's issue with allowing recess appointments? What is the actual issue? One other question. Tony, will you discuss the mining school investment Trump announced today? Big news. I'm still reading into that one, actually. So if I have other news on that over the weekend, I was following the Senate so much, I didn't have time to read. You guys know I'm a huge fan of trade schools and also like industrial development here in the United States. I think that's great. I haven't really got enough info on it yet to cover it as a broadcaster here. So a small no today, but maybe later. Anywho, back to the question. Why is Thune not allowing these recess appointments? Thune is a technocrat. So Thune, as a technocrat, understands that the President of the United States sometimes does some wild card stuff. He doesn't like that. Technocrats who believe in ruling by the experts, that's what I mean. I don't usually say establishment because that just means they've been there a long time. That doesn't necessarily impart good or bad. But the technocracy does not like the executive branch and Trump, which has a populist administration, doing populist things. The problem is they don't explain this in public. And so they're just thwarting the president. Now, the real issue, by the way, for all of this, the actual answer, and I have no problem giving it to you, even if some connected to me really don't like me being this forward with it. Inez Stepman, who is over at the Claremont Institute and the Independent Women's Forum, I think extremely highly of her. Her husband, Jarrett Stepman, writes for the Daily Signal. He's also an excellent guy. I highly recommend his writing. She posted this today. She said, I think the thing that I learned in D.C. that pissed me off more than anything else is learning how often one annoying rhino, Thune, is actually standing in for 10 more annoying rhinos who are doing a kabuki theater piece in favor of a bill that they know won't pass. For example, John Curtis and Cornyn, who say, oh, I'm a co-sponsor of the Save America. Of course I'm in support of it. Or Tillis saying the same thing. They're liars. Thune is standing in the way because there's a long-standing rule in the Senate that you side with your party and you do what leadership says. The problem is the Senate's making it up. I'm not joking, guys. And this is something I want to communicate to you. The rules that the Senate follows are made up. They don't matter anymore. Thune is making new rules up as to what adjournment and recess means. What he tried to do in this rule today is adjourn for 2 weeks is not right at all. I'm confused a little by thinking they could get away with this. This is why eventually the Senate's going to become like the House, and the establishment, the technocratic leadership is going to be tossed aside. It is you are seeing the very last gasp of the establishmentarian. The real reason that they're not putting this on the record, again, as I said at the very beginning of the show, Cornyn and Cassidy of Texas and Louisiana, respectively, they went on the record saying they weren't going to vote for Attorney General Todd Blanche. And even though they're both ousted at the end of the year, this national pressure went all at once. And so they ended up flipping. So if Thune, who's been really cagey and kind of quiet about this, if he stands in the breach, he allows all of these other senators to stand in the way. Now, here's also the other ugly part that I really hate to tell all of you. Thune couldn't do anything anyway. And this, well, he could get people off of committees. Oh, okay. That's not going to do anything. Collins doesn't care. Susan Collins is really the only one who could be hurt by this. Lisa Murkowski's already won her daddy's seat in the primary. She's not going anywhere for now. And again, it's because she sucks that Alaska's in jeopardy right now, which is wild to me. The other senators who are retiring don't care. Mitch McConnell's probably awake about 4 hours of the day right now, maybe. Tillis is retiring. Cornyn is retiring. I mean, there's maybe some national pressure that you could just bug them all day until finally they were letting go. Okay. But that's really about it. That's it. And it's a lot of people who are very, very old in the Senate. No offense to the elderly who watch the show and who are up there in age, who think, well, I'm out of here anyway, so to hell with it, who cares? I don't know, it'll be fine. Nothing, it's not that serious. And it is that serious. And Americans do, in fact, feel that it is that serious. So, no, I'm not saying Thune has an excuse. I'm saying that is what he's using as his excuse. I'm telling you that Thune is both guilty and that he also couldn't do anything. I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm serious. I see the comments are like, well, it is Thune's fault. Say it's Thune's fault. It's partly his fault, but it's also not. I mean, do you not see Cornyn and Murkowski and Collins talk? Really? That's what he's by the way, when he gets up there and says, I'm the only one who can count to 50, he's not wrong. Because there are Republican senators who would vote no. He doesn't want to put them on the record because they are using the shield of, I won't criticize you, you won't. Like when Tucker Carlson went crazy and a lot of Republicans were like, I'm not going to criticize Tucker because we don't do that. Excuse me? No. I will praise those who are doing right and I will criticize those who are doing wrong. I don't care if it's the president. I don't care if it's Tucker. I don't care if it's a think tank. I don't care if it's a senator. I don't care if it's my friend down the street. That's the standard. So, that all said, hopefully all of you have a phenomenal weekend because it doesn't appear that the Senate is out just yet, which means they're probably going to push back a little extra recess later on into the evening. So, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.